Okay, let's get back to business. So yeah, hackathons are basically the same thing as game jams, but you don't have to make a game. It's usually like instead of them giving you a theme, they give you a problem, or maybe it is a theme, and then you have to address that by creating an application or like something along those lines. So, board game. But continuing on, so today we have level design. Next week we will have intro to Unity. And like I said last meeting, if you're interested in working on our t-shirt design for this year, please let me know. I talked about the chairs last week, but I don't feel like I didn't emphasize the creative committee enough. The creative committee isn't really any special obligation. Basically, I just give you like a role in the Discord server so you can see more stuff, see another channel, so you can collaborate with people and work on a t-shirt design. You don't have to do any extra work. You just submit ideas and stuff. So if you're interested in that, please email me, ping me on Discord, DM me, whatever, and I can get you added. And then the last thing, club dues are $15, club t-shirt is $15, or you can do both for a grand total of $25.
What are club dues?
So the club dues aren't required, but they help us fund things like our prizes for the game jams. If we ever have like food or anything, we use our club dues to help cover costs for that sort of thing. So it's more important during the game jams, but if you're already planning on participating, I would encourage you to pay for your dues ahead of time, just so we have that money so we can apply it to the game jams, the prizes and stuff.
How does it get paid?
So Jimmy is our treasurer. You can pay him in cash or check. Preferably cash. It makes things a lot easier. We can't do Venmo or anything. The university like strictly prohibits it, so it has to be cash. And you can just give it to him, and then he'll work out with you on that. So, okay. So one thing I wanted to talk about first is the interest form results on what everyone was interested in case you were curious. So the top 5 meeting topics, which hopefully we'll be able to cover most of these. Number 1 was how to plan a game. Number 2 is the topic we're covering today, so I think it's a good thing we're doing that. Number 3 is game modding, followed by character design, and then how to deal with burnout, as well as the best coding language or engine for a game. And I feel like that one's going to get heated, but we'll get to that when we get there. Here's the bottom meeting topics. So these are ones we're probably not going to do, and I just wanted to point it out. If you are curious in any of these topics, if you voted for them, just like say something in the Discord server, or ask any of the exec team. It doesn't matter. We can talk about stuff if you're interested. Board game design, not surprising. I mean, board games are cool, but apparently not everyone thinks that. Different markets, that one was kind of vague. So, social media marketing. Marketing again, risk and reward. Parity in games, which was tied for that, as well as reusing assets. And we did some of these last year, so if you're interested in, I think we did marketing last year and reusing assets. So we have a YouTube page where we record everything and upload it. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, you can view it there. But yeah, top workshop topics. I'm just going to fly through them here since we are a little behind. Are these pixel art, other art, so just art, Blender, animation, music, pathfinding, and modding support. So these are things that we'll probably cover. We covered pixel art last year, so we might do that, but we didn't do like normal art. We can do animation this year. So, and then these are workshops that probably won't get done. Cry. But these are, there were still a lot of votes for them as well. So, anyways, on to the thing you actually care about, because I know nobody really cared about that, but in case you were, yes.
What's multi-threading?
Multi-threading, so every computer has, when it runs code, it goes through each step one at a time. Do you know how to code? Okay, yeah. So it goes through each step like one at a time, like each line, right? So multi-threading is when you use multiple cores, so you can run multiple lines of code at the same time. Yeah, so sometimes with games it helps because then you can have like it loading something in the background while you're also running the game, so it makes things faster. But. Okay, so we're going to cover a few different topics. on just things you should think about before you design a level, and then we will actually walk through and do some level design stuff. So, first things first. What type of game are you making? This is really important because there's a lot of different factors that can alter how a level is designed, such as having single player versus multiplayer. Like if you have one person, they're going to be able to accomplish less tasks, or you might want to design something with multiple players to have like team tasks or something. The genre can matter, obviously, because if you're doing a top-down versus like a platformer, it's going to make a huge difference on stuff like that. And then you also want to think about their motivation. So if you have like an end goal to the game, like say you're thinking about like a Mario type game, it's usually the flag at the end of the level. What's their motivation? It's to get to that flag. Whereas a game that's open-ended, like if you're making like a Grand Theft Auto, I mean that's a huge map. I mean you're probably not going to make that yourself, but if you're making a big map that's supposed to be more for exploration, it's like the way that you design it is going to be a little different. I can elaborate more on that once we get to actual drawing. You also want to think about progression, and this is more for not the open-ended levels, but Mario, like I said. The player wants to feel like they're getting somewhere, right? If you just have the same theme and the same things over and over, it's going to get really repetitive and boring. And at that point, they might as well just be playing a game that is supposed to be that way. So Mario does a great job at capturing this, where the first levels for almost all of their games are usually bright colors, very like chippy and like happy, and it's lighthearted. Whereas their later levels get dark. They have a lot more obstacles. The music is scarier, so that's also something you should think about. Yes?
Mario's level designs also operate on the 5-act Japanese structure.
Would you mind elaborating a little more? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Everybody just turned. Everybody did those swivel chairs.
The swivel chairs.
Basically, the starting levels are very simple to understand. Okay, hop on the enemy, whatever. Fine. You get a little bit of the terrain, like on the left there, we see a little bit of pipe, so therefore we now know, okay, in the future we're probably going to get some more pipe. And then we get the warp box and whatever, we keep going. It just, you have
Keeps
to play
building.
and feel it.
Yeah.
And also know the extra.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk about that here soon too. How to like continually build on stuff. Yeah, so one more thing to also think about is difficulty curve. Sometimes this is really hard to get, and usually takes some testing from other people, because usually you've been playing the game over and over. If you're working on it, it's hard to get that outside perspective. And unless you're intentionally making the game really hard or really difficult, like if you're trying to make a rage game, typically you want the difficulty curve to be really steep because it makes people mad when they can't do something. Or think about games like Getting Over It. Yeah, right? Yeah, like the difficulty curve is pretty steep because if you mess up once, you go all the way back to the beginning practically. But most games, you want to try to keep it in this middle flow where you might dip into a little difficult and like give them a little bit of an anxiety of like dying or losing. But you also sometimes want to dip back into that like boredom, kind of back and forth. So you basically like having like rest points where it's a little easier, just so they're not constantly worried or they're not constantly bored. It kind of gives them challenge points, which is why sometimes when you play games, you have levels that are harder versus like the next level is a little easier. Just give them a bit of a break.
Like Celeste.
What?
Hell like yeah. Celeste.
Yeah, like Celeste. Yeah.
Have you played Celeste?
No, but I've seen footage. So I've never actually. But.
I think a really good example of this would be like Elden Ring. Like it's a game that's built to be hard, but in the beginning it still is not. So they did a really good job with their curve, where they still kind of give you just that little bit of you can do it, and then they destroy you.
They wanted you to die to a main boss fight and then piss off for 3 hours and then come back.
Yeah. Yeah, every game has a different curve to it. But this is something you want to think about when you're designing levels as well. I guess there was lines on here as well I was supposed to talk about. But yeah, this is what I was saying with the really hard ones And then this is what you want, where you kind of go in and out between each, like too hard or too soft. And then lastly, like, what kind of level do you want to make? So this is more to do with like the theme or the mechanics. So if you're trying to tie everything else in and keep things like all related together, like this is also really important to have that feel. And this can also like influence the mechanics. So just to define what a mechanic is, it's usually like a specific feature. So I'll take Mario since I keep using Mario. Mechanics in Mario's are like jumping, wall jumping, hitting a block that will like pop something out of it, a pipe, basically like anything that they can interact with that does something. So these mechanics can also influence the level a lot, and it's something you got to consider beforehand, like what types of mechanics you have. And I'll talk about that a little more as well. And this is just something that I thought was kind of cool to see on how level designs usually go. So if you make something top down, this is pretty like good example of kind of how people advance over time creating levels. When people first make levels, it's like the one on the left, with the beginner, where maybe you place some boxes here or there, you have some different paths around, and it looks all fine and dandy, right? But when the player actually plays it, it might not be very coherent or fluent. Whereas over time, as you continually try to adapt and make use design theory and stuff, you'll want your levels to look more like one of these two. Which at this point, like, what should I call it? Hardware isn't really a problem, so you can make whatever you want for levels. But you want something that's a little more natural, as well as kind of unique and memorable for players, so that if they see something, they're like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then when they talk about it to their friends later, they'd be like, this level is super awesome for this reason. Otherwise, like, if it's just another generic level, it's like, who cares? So, well, I mean, somebody cares, but.
Is that what is wrong with intermediate?
Intermediate is fine, but like.
Intermediate looks like a Doom level.
Yeah, it's kind of more. The problem with intermediate, if you read the text as well, in this specific instance, like, it's a little cramped. Like, look at some of these hallways, they're like super thin, which could be realistic, but at the same time, from a video game perspective, like, it's really easy to get cramped in there, like a bunch of enemies come in. Whereas at least in the other hallways, you have some wiggle room. Yeah.
I would just add, like, because like back in the day when like Half-Life and natural selection maps were being made, visibility was like a big issue, so they had to take each room separate from hallways, so that it would only render one room at a time. That's why older games used to look more like that intermediate layout, like it references Half-Life 1 and natural selection.
Yep. Yeah.
It doesn't matter anymore. So much.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of level design has changed over time just due to hardware limitations. Because nowadays you can render like millions of triangles on the screen on most devices, so the layout doesn't necessarily matter. Whereas, yeah, like you said, like sometimes the level design had to change because they had to design it in such a way that the computer could actually handle it. So, okay, so how do you make your levels actually look good after you've designed them? This isn't something I'm expecting you to worry about today, but I just wanted to kind of touch on it quick. Part of it is the art perspective. So when you're designing the level, maybe you should think about like the art that you're going to put into the game as well. Sometimes the art can interfere with the level design. Well, I don't know if interfere is the best word, but it can influence how you design the level. Maybe you want to have things look a certain way, etc. So, yes. Okay, and then one other thing to also think about is this design perspective, as the text says. And you want things to look kind of like, not too cramped, but not too spaced apart. And you want to have it really easy for the player to kind of figure out where they go. I know a common complaint with maybe more of open-ended, like Breath of the Wild, for example. Like sometimes it's hard to tell where you're supposed to go. which is sometimes okay if you're doing more exploration, but when you're doing a platformer, the player should know where to go. Sometimes it's really easy, they're supposed to get to the right side of the screen from the left, whatever, but you want that to be obvious to a point where they don't get lost and just like give up because they don't know what to do. So, any questions about anything? Okay, on to the fun part. Time to actually design a level. Woo! Woo! So, first thing we want to talk about is how is your player going to move? Actually, what I should say first is when you design your level on the paper, you can do whatever you want. If you want to do a top-down or like a side scroller, or if you want to do something 3D, be my guest, but it's going to be a lot harder to draw on a piece of paper. Yeah, you can do whatever perspective you want. And then at the end, if you want to share, like if you have something that you think is pretty cool, we'll have time to let you come up and just share. But anyways, so how is your player going to move? So this is really important because it influences how you're going to design the level, right? Say that you are designing a level, say that you're making a Mario game. I'm going to keep using the hell out of this example, but say you're making a Mario game. He can run, he can jump, he can sprint. That's great. And then halfway through the game, you decide, it would be super cool if I would add wall jumping to the game. And then you add wall jumping. And then those levels have wall jumping. Well, then you didn't think about, at the beginning of the game, there's a bunch of points where people can wall jump and can just like cheat through the level, right? So you want to have all of these mechanics and movement ideas kind of thoroughly thought out before you start working on the game. Even if it's something that they unlock later, what if they can come back? You want to be able to have that in mind because that can change how you influence the game or how you design the levels. So, let's make this. Yeah, let's start on your level. So, mostly what I want you to do is, well, you can do whatever you want, but it'll look something more like this. We'll have you go by piece. So I'm gonna have like a different topic where I'll talk about it, and then I'll give you like a little bit of time to start drawing a part of a level. And you want a gray box, so don't go too in detail on stuff. But say that like if there's an obstacle or something, you just draw like a really simple picture or a box or something and maybe label it. Because if you draw it really detailed and then later you decide you want to erase it, like, this is a very experimental time. So it's meant to be able to change stuff easily. And then once you actually have the level kind of thought out, maybe towards the end of the meeting, you can draw more cute pictures and stuff. So, okay. So first part, how do you teach the player? Those images are not supposed to be up that high. Anyways, so does your game need a tutorial? Tutorials are very important parts of a game. They can teach players how to do something, whether it is very explicit or implicit. An explicit tutorial is really obvious. It's like press A to jump. Whereas implicit is more, you put the players in a situation where they have to learn something before they can move on. So depending on what you want to do, this can influence how you start level design, how you do the first level that you design. Because maybe you want it to be explicit, maybe you want the game to be more experimental for the player. However, whatever you do not do this. This used to be very popular with older games where you would just show the controller and say how to do everything. That's great, but as soon as that screen goes away, I forget everything. Okay, so it's a lot better to have a tutorial where you actually look at stuff, you actually do the motions with your hands. So, yeah, tutorials, try to keep it simple, and like I said, you can do something that's more implicit, maybe in the middle, or something very explicit. It is up to you. Like you don't need to go over everything in a game, just kind of start with maybe a few starting points, just a few basic things that players need to know to get through the game, such as like jumping or something. And you can try to teach by doing as well, like I said, like don't just tell them how. You want them, like even in Cuphead, it says what to do, but you still have to do it.
In a journalist film for like 2 hours.
What?
In a journalist film for like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
That example.
Okay, your turn.
That means the game is good.
So try to start off and try not to fill the whole page because we are going to have a bunch of chunks that we draw for the level. But start trying to draw a level. Try to teach your player that you have maybe thought up in your head a few basic things, how to move around. Maybe if they're supposed to interact with a door or something, have a door around the starting location. Maybe an attack of some sort if you're one of the objectives is like shooting an enemy. I'll give you some time to try it out.
Do we use the whole page?
Try to use just like a small, like maybe about a sixth of the page or something. Because we'll have different things that I'll talk about, and then you'll keep adding on, so you don't want to run out of space. You can still draw
How
something.
complicated should it be?
Okay. Well, this is the very beginning, right? So it should be very not complicated because you want to teach them something. So now let's design some actual mechanics that build on the tutorial, hopefully. So the tutorial is just like the initial part to get going, but then after that you want to start introducing different mechanics and different things that players will see throughout the course of the game. And this is something that you want to kind of introduce incrementally. At first you want it to be very simple and not very risky, such as being able to figure out how to jump over a gap, how to, well, in this case with Shovel Knight you can actually see those, but it's like trying to jump on those bushes. It's teaching the player how to accomplish that goal without any fear of penalty, so that it's not like a gaping pit underneath them. There's not like lava everywhere. But this is just like if they fall, it's like no biggie, just get up and try again. So what I want you to do is so add something just after the tutorial that adds something new, or maybe a couple new things, in such like an environment that's easy for them to experiment and try to learn this new mechanic. Go for it. I can try to elaborate on that more, but yeah, say in the tutorial you taught them how to jump. Maybe you want wall jumping, have an area for wall jumping, where they just have to do it a couple times and learn it. Or if they want to like ground pound or something, have some basic boxes to, but there's like, there's no hazards yet, unless you want to, but that would increase the difficulty curve, so. All right, while you were finishing up, I'm gonna keep talking. So, let's add some spice to the game. So let's actually make the game interesting. Like I was talking about before, a big part of a game is an objective. So when it comes to objectives, you want to think about your target audience. What type of players do you want playing your game? Do you want very outgoing players that are like going to try to do everything, like speed run the game, collect all the coins, something like that? Or do you want, like I said before, like a rage game? Or do you want something that's a little more casual? Think like Animal Crossing. This is something where they're not going to go very ham, like you're not killing things in Animal Crossing, you're just kind of going around doing chores. Sounds very exciting.
I thought you do kill things in Animal Crossing.
Well, not in the same way like Dark Souls, right? Dark Souls, it's very like hands-on, like you're the one actually controlling the combat, whereas Animal Crossing, it's very like hybrid.
Kill things in Animal Crossing?
Fish.
I don't actually know what they do.
Fish.
No, you just slave them in a museum.
Put it in your pocket, the fish probably something.
Eternal suffering. Anyways, but you want to think about both groups of players when you design your levels as well, right? Because even though your game could be one way or the other, you might have like a friend or somebody that wants to play the game, and they might have something else in mind. So you want to try to create the general objective, but you also want to add, maybe you add like a secret hidden like flag every level or something for people to explore, or you just have the the straightforward path for the pretty simple players. Yes.
Like Kirby games, right?
Yeah, a lot of games do this. Kirby, Mario. I'm sure even there's a Yoshi game that does or something like. I keep thinking Nintendo stuff.
Sega,
But yeah, like
There we go.
Shovel Knight. Yeah, that's true. Nintendo's really good at level design. Like Shovel Knight, I've been playing Shovel Knight recently. Like they have the base game. You can follow the level, kill the enemies, right? But there's also like hidden walls that you can find. You can find the music notes, paper things. Yeah, the
Try to
music
go through it
sheets.
without dying or using checkpoints.
Yeah,
Core memories for Psychonauts.
yeah. Which I can't remember if I talked about extrinsic or intrinsic goals, but
Ahead in time.
yeah. But without further ado, try to create next part of your level, and try to, or you can add to a previous part of your game. Try to add something for those like players, something that's extra, right? Something not other than the basic path. Try to add a power up of some sort, or like a hidden object or a collectible that's hard to reach. Maybe they have to jump using like different mechanics they introduced before. Maybe there's a something that's hard to reach that they have to try to get to. Yeah, do that. Okay. So hopefully you've added a power up. Now let's add a gimmick. You might say, what is a gimmick? Gimmicks are something that's like not very typical, I guess, of the game. So here's a lot of examples from the new Mario game, Wonderland, right? Whatever it is.
I didn't know what this game was until I
Mario Wonder, dude, I didn't watch the Nintendo Direct. I just heard about it.
Can I talk about this slide?
Whatever. You come run the club. I don't know.
Let me talk about it.
Anyways,
Let me talk. Let me talk.
you can talk if you want.
Yeah, I'll talk.
No, I'll talk.
I'll talk.
Okay, well anyways, try to add a gimmick. So this is something that's like unique, something that you're only going to see once in the game. In this game, well, it doesn't have to be once, but very, very seldom. So maybe you want to add something like backtracking. So like you have a part in the level where you have to go backwards to grab something, or maybe it like you pull a lever and like a chest appears or something, and then you can go back and get it. Or you can add another power up that's unique. That accomplishes some goal, like say that there's part of a level where there's a bunch of boxes in the way, and you make like a very large power up and you smash through all the boxes, and that's just that part of the game. Or it could be something that's part of the environment. Maybe like you don't have any like vines in the game, so that you want the player to be able to climb on them and jump. You have it in just like one part of the level, or a level. Yeah, something like that. So in the next part, try to add something that's some sort of a gimmick. Doesn't have to be anything like crazy, but just something that you don't think would repeat, but you think it'd be kind of fun for the player just to see something different.
Make it fun. Y'all know Mario Wonder. Do a wonder effect. What would happen if you touched a wonder flower in your level? Maybe everything turns into toilet paper or something.
So you want to add drugs to your game?
Yes. Add drugs. All of you.
When you
Come up. I don't want to see
drugs if
anything
you
that
want.
isn't drugs.
I didn't say that. Okay. So I'm going to keep moving on, and I'll keep talking. If you're still working, that's fine. So, last part's really simple. Try to wrap it up somehow. If you want to add a little more, that's okay as well, if you haven't filled out much of your sheet. But try to add something that ends the level. So if you had like a specific objective in mind, you can have that here. Maybe you have a challenge. I guess that's what it is. Maybe you had some sort of challenge, so take like a previous mechanic, make it harder, add like a spike of death at the bottom of the pit or something, where if they die, they have to go back. You could have like a checkpoint or something if you need it. And then have some way to end the level. So a goal in mind, maybe it's a door or a boss. You could have a boss fight at the end, even though this is the first level, but it could be very simple. But yeah, try to do something that ends the level. If you finish your level, feel free to go back and maybe add a little more detail to the drawing now that it's more or less finalized. If you want to make it look a little prettier. Okay, is anybody still working? Okay, that's fine. You'll have some time to keep wrapping up. Okay, so just a quick review when you design levels. Try to think of this pattern when it comes to creating levels. You want the player, or not pattern I guess, but try to think of these four like core concepts. You want the player to learn, you want the player to play, you want to challenge them, as well as maybe surprise them. Learning is great because it keeps things fresh, keeps the player wanting to keep going because they're learning new things, and they want to be able to have fun as well. You know, if there's a certain mechanic that's really fun, you don't want to keep giving them really boring stuff like bombs everywhere, bomb levels. But you also want to challenge them as well and not just make it super easy. I mean, you can if that's what you're going for, but ideally you want to have that nice balance of fun and challenging, and also surprise them sometimes. Don't make everything really expected. Maybe throw something in that something they wouldn't expect. So, oh my bad. But yeah. Now that hopefully everyone is done or almost done, if that's okay, is there anybody that would like to share what they have created?